Black Friday is coming soon, and there's a big issue most course creators have, and that's deliverability. So if your email list is disengaged, then you don't need better copy. You just need to make sure your emails are actually ending up in your subscribers' inbox. Hey, you're listening to Master the Inbox, the podcast where course creators, coaches, and consultants come to learn how to sell with email in a non-spammy way. I'm your host, Monica Badiu, a customer-centric copywriter, course creator, and fellow entrepreneur. And today, along with my guest, Andrew Kordek, we're going to talk about some of the best ways you can improve your deliverability ahead of Black Friday. Andrew is a fractional evangelist at iPost, an email service provider built for the modern marketer. With over 24 years in the email industry, he is a recognized innovator, thought leader, and advocate for responsible email marketing. He has been rated number 5 as one of the most influential email marketers, and I'm extremely grateful he's my guest today. So, hello, Andrew, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Monica. I appreciate it. This is going to be a fun session.
I'm excited. Yes. So let's start from the beginning. Now, deliverability is a big word. And while everybody has heard of it, most people don't really know what that means, what that is. So can you give us a short intro?
Yeah, it's a great way to start out. So I think that there's sometimes confusion between the word delivery and deliverability. And in a nutshell, deliverability means your email gets somewhere, to the spam folder, to the inbox, to a different folder, whereas delivery, which is often, some people would say, I have a 99% delivery rate, that just means it actually passed and got to the server, right? There wasn't a bounce back. Delivery is not necessarily a representative of your inbox placement. Deliverability is. And, I've been in this, like I said, for 24 years, and deliverability keeps changing. And so, I remember the days of 15 years ago, right? The ability to get in the inbox was a little bit easier. But now with the concentration of so many different algorithms at the Googles and Microsofts and the Yahoos of the world, it's a little bit more difficult. And they've provided guidelines of how to get there. But oftentimes, deliverability is still sort of like this empty hole that people sort of look into and say, how do I navigate the deliverability world? And it's tough. And, I'm constantly learning about it as well.
Well, this is one of the reasons I actually wanted you to be part of this season
Yeah.
2, because
Yeah.
Black Friday is highly competitive,
Yeah.
especially in the inbox.
Yeah.
So deliverability is something that I talk about with my clients, but they look at me and they're like, why do you care? You're a copywriter. And I'm
Yeah.
like, if your list isn't engaged, if the
Yeah.
chances for you to actually being seen there in your inbox instead of triggering spam filters and all of that,
Yeah.
you don't need to hire a copywriter. You need to do something else.
Yeah, right. Well, actually, a lot of people can monitor to see if they're having any deliverability issues on their own. It just takes a little bit of patience, also a little bit of learning, right? And so I think one of the things that I'm asked, and maybe you're asked too, is, well, how can I tell if I'm having deliverability issues? Well, it's kind of simple. And I think about deliverability as sort of like when you write emails or when you create emails or when you create campaigns, you have to be as diligent in monitoring deliverability as you do everything else in your business. A big way to tell if you're having deliverability issues is actually really simple. It takes a little bit of practice, takes a little bit of time. But oftentimes people wait and aren't proactive. They're just reactive. Like, oh my gosh, we've hit a block list, or oh my gosh, we're seeing huge numbers decline in Gmail or Yahoo. Well, the best way to monitor to tell if you're having deliverability issues is take your top 5, maybe even your top 10 domains that you send to, and track on a monthly basis or every couple of weeks, especially if you're a heavy mailer, and say, are our engagement rates going down? Are they staying the same, or are they going up? Clearly, if they're going down, and what I mean by engagement is you're looking at a variety of different things, but mostly you're looking at clicks, right? Opens subjective, right? But if you're looking at clicks over a period of time and you notice a decline in those clicks, then you might be having some sort of deliverability issue. The second thing is to monitor the IP addresses that you're sending out. There's lots of free tools out there to monitor and say, how is my reputation when I enter in my IP address going? Am I hitting block lists? Are these block lists worth noting? And it's sort of like regularly like brushing your teeth, right? You kind of have to do it quite often, right, to make sure that things are going smoothly. There's lots of opportunity, and there's lots of people who have written about how to tell if you're having deliverability issues. But it really starts with you. It starts with you, the email marketer or the marketer itself, to really have a good handle and to consistently look for things that could potentially be deliverability issues.
I love that you mentioned the click-through rate as one of the KPIs to keep track of, because most people are just stuck at the level of open rates. And they're like, oh, my open rates are so down, are so low. What can I do to get more people to open my emails?
Yeah.
But if they don't click those emails, oh, that's very good.
Yeah. You could use open rate as a directional metric, meaning you can say, well, what's this versus that? But ultimately, especially if you're a retailer, whether you're selling socks or whether you're selling ovens or shoes, you kind of need to look more so at the click-through rates to get a better sense of, oh, maybe I have a problem here, maybe I don't.
Oh, yeah. And actually getting the click is super important for Black Friday. Because
Sure.
we're talking about a highly competitive time when if you want people to buy from your email list, they have to click something in that email and they
Totally.
need to do it now rather than 3 days later. So
Yeah.
I'm actually curious from the point of view of deliverability, one being improving it ahead of Black Friday and then keeping it at a positive level after Black Friday.
Yeah.
What do you think is different? I mean, how is it impactful to, you know, whatever happens on a regular day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Well, and that's a great question. And I think what we need to do is, first of all, take a step back. There have been lots of changes over the last 2 years. Specifically, we've heard of this thing called Yahoo Goal, right? Where now Yahoo and Gmail are have set forth some requirements. You need to have authentication in place, including DMARC. You need to keep your spam complaint rates under a certain amount. This is not just a thing leading up to Black Friday or after Black Friday. This is a consistent throughout the year of monitoring and building your reputation and maintaining your reputation. So it really starts with, right, what are you sending? Who are you sending to? But most importantly, is the engine. And what I mean by the engine, to make an analogy, is the engine of authentication, the engine of making sure your complaint rates are under a certain amount, making sure your lists are clean. That keeps the engine running. It's sort of like changing the oil in your car, right? You're going to want to maintain that throughout the year leading up to it. It's not as if as of November 1st or October 15th, you need to start worrying about your reputation and build it up. You should have that consistency building up throughout the year so that when Black Friday rolls around, there really is no issue. You're more interested in the performance of the email or the performance of the website or the discounts or the sales or whatever you're going to have, right? And you're not really necessarily focused on, oh my gosh, am I going to get into the inbox because I have a deliverability issue or a potential deliverability issue? You've changed the oil, you've rotated the tires in your car throughout the year to make sure that you've got a really solid performing program. And we can dive into a little bit more of this depending upon the questions that you may have.
So what I'm hearing is, cleanup and re-engagement once or twice a year,
Mm-hmm.
and ideally an ongoing evergreen automated process that
Mhm.
kind of does the re-engagement and cleanup for you while you're doing other elements of your business. Now, I
Yeah.
brought this up because a lot of people, sorry, I'll just finish this. A lot of people, they're so scared about sending the Black Friday emails because they think increasing the frequency of emails in a short time period and
Mhm.
making those emails salesy is actually going to impact the health and reputation of their domain over a short period of time.
Sure.
So I'm curious, what are your thoughts about that?
So you should be scared in sending an email on Black Friday if you actually haven't prepared for it. Let me give you an example. Oftentimes, people during the holiday season, leading up to Black Friday or after Black Friday or during the holiday season, increase their frequency and send sometimes to lists or to contacts or subscribers that they haven't sent to in a while for the hope that person's going to buy again. This is where segmentation really works out. And I'm going to throw something out there for everybody is to say if you've been sending regular emails to contacts, right, and they're buyers, right, they've bought before in the past, they've engaged with your emails leading up to that, you don't necessarily have to send them a deluge or a ton of email leading up to Black Friday, on Black Friday, and post Black Friday, because they're going to buy anyway, right? Or they're supposedly going to buy anyway with a little bit of a nudge. Sending 2, 3, 4, 6 emails in a day, Black Friday or Cyber Monday or whatever, may not make sense to them. And you also run the risk of alienating them and maybe wanting to unsubscribe. Now, the opposite of that could be true as well. You could actually message leading up to Black Friday to say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. subscriber, you're going to get emails from us on Friday, Black Friday, at this time, this time, this time, this time. We're doing it as a result because we want you as a customer. We want you to purchase. Here's an opportunity for you. Please don't unsubscribe, or give them a schedule of what you're looking to do. Let them know up front that, right? Rather than if you don't want to segment. And then you've at least pre-warned people that that is coming, right? Especially if you can say, I'm going to send an email at 9 a.m. or at 2 p.m. or at 6 p.m. or all of those times. Just look out in your inbox for that. But I'm going to use this word but because if you are adding new subscribers to your list that you haven't sent to in quite some time, or that maybe they purchased last year, haven't really engaged, this is the time now, or at least especially in October coming up, right, is to hygiene your list. Go to a list vendor or a vendor, and I'll just there's tons of them out there. There's Webula, there's Kickbox, there's AtData, there's a ton of other sort of reputable vendors that can not only hygiene your list, not tell you whether or not the email is valid, but hygiene your list and identify that there are other things. Clean your lists, right? Make sure you're sending to a legitimate email address, not something that is going to come back or that is a hidden spam address that will get you in trouble, or maybe they've turned and that email address is no longer valid. There's a huge difference between hygiening your emails and just making sure that they're verified, right? Huge difference. So to recap, that is leading up to it, do your due diligence. Don't just come up with some great whiz-bang campaign and expect that everything is going to be fine. Pre-warn or segment, but most importantly, clean your lists of people that you haven't sent to. And I think the other thing that, a lot of people tend to kind of freak out a little bit, right? Because it's really important. It's important for the brand, right? That they perform well on Black Friday. This is your chance to train your program to do extremely well. Look, we just had the Olympics this past summer, right? And the guy that ran the marathon didn't show up and just were like, I'm going to run the marathon, or a swimmer. They didn't jump in the pool and did it. They prepared, they trained, they did the things in order to get to the Olympics, and then they either performed or didn't perform. And that's kind of how you should equate your email program, is train it and do the things right, in addition to what you're going to do in terms of deals or sales or the site or whatever. And that's where I think marketers tend to trip up.
I love that you mentioned that, because this is the reason I've opened season 2 to other pros. Because
Yeah.
right now we're recording and it's August. This is probably going to go out in late September. But
Okay.
this is true. I mean, you have to think ahead, you have to plan ahead. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
saying this, like I've been talking about Black Friday since early August, and people look at me like I'm crazy, because
Yeah.
obviously they're enjoying their holidays. And here I am saying, well, Q4 is coming and Black Friday
Mm-hmm.
is going to be here sooner than later, and
Yep.
it's not as easy as it used to be. So if you really want to have a profitable Black Friday campaign, start preparing ahead of time. Sometimes that actually begins in September. For my clients,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually beginning in August, because I want them to think really hard about what
Yeah.
they're doing for Black Friday and identify all the opportunities and all the vulnerabilities in their
Mm-hmm.
funnels, in their email list. So I'm so happy that you mentioned that. And you're not the first guest to say it. So this is
Sure.
going to be like the motto of the whole season.
Great.
Start preparing your
Yep.
Black Friday ahead of time.
Totally. Totally.
Let's say I do my checkup and I do
Mm-hmm.
have an issue with deliverability. Now,
Okay.
let's say this goes out in September. We have 2 more months before November. What
Mm-hmm.
is the lowest hanging fruit for someone who is struggling with
Yeah.
deliverability right now?
Well, because a couple different things. First of all, the easiest thing is to hire a deliverability specialist, right? To say, what do we do? You may or may not have the budget for that, and that's okay. But what you can do if you don't have the budget for that is, if you're struggling to get into the inbox, ask yourself, what has changed? What are we doing differently than we did 6 months ago or 3 months ago? Look, there's so many free tools out there, everybody. You can go check your reputation with the Gmail postmaster. You can go look to see if you're on block lists. You can go look to say, how has my reputation been on whether I share my IP or whether I have a dedicated IP? And then ask yourself, what is it that's the single most important thing to get in the inbox? Are we sending to old contacts? Are we sending to unengaged contacts? Can we dial that back? It's sort of like, I look at it as, I don't know if you cook, Monica. I kind of cook, but think about it like making a recipe, right, of a new dish. Sometimes it requires a little bit more salt. Sometimes it requires a little bit more butter. Sometimes it requires a little bit more thing to make it good, to make it better. And this is where you guys as marketers need to say, what am I doing differently? How can I change? And sometimes you might have to cut back. Sometimes you might have to cut out some subscribers. Sometimes you might have to say, I'm going to contact the Gmail postmaster, or I'm on a block list that is preventing me from getting into the inbox, right, regularly. And these block lists, at least the big ones, the major ones, have methodologies or processes to say, yeah, you're on it. Everyone gets on it. Here's the process you need to go through in order to get off of it. Most legitimate block lists, most legitimate issues that happen can be solved by yourself, but it takes a little bit of work. And remember what I said at the beginning, right? If your low hanging fruit should always know that my top 10 domains that I sent to are clean and having great reputation throughout the last few months. So if you start anything today, is take a look back to say, what's the benchmark for my click-through rates, or yes, maybe your open rates, with these sort of things. So if you're struggling to get in, then you've noticed, oh my gosh, something happened on September 11th or September 15th where my reputation went down. And now I need to go back. Maybe it was something in my creative that had a link that was a bad link that links out to something. Maybe a group of people said, oh, well, we're unsubscribing or reporting spam complaints to this, and it was part of a new list that you got through a sweepstakes or through different things. I mean, it's like a fine recipe, right? Sometimes it could be even the most hidden thing, and it's not necessarily the most obvious thing to make it better. And so you kind of need to dig a little bit deeper. But again, if you have the budget, hire somebody that can help you. And if you don't, you kind of have to do it on your own. Does that help?
Yes, that was very, very good because listening to you, I realized I've been involved in many, we call them re-engagement campaigns, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you go with the approach of like one size fits all, and
Yeah.
you go for like very specific things, and the results are still coming back and they're not good, you're like, what the hell is going on? And in
Mm-hmm.
3 specific cases, three
Mm-hmm.
issues with deliverability, the reason behind each of the situations was different. So the approach to recover the list was different or took longer. And
Yeah.
I'm very grateful that you mentioned that because I don't think people understand how serious this is. And sometimes it's just a matter of, yes, like broken links or I don't know, something that looks weird to your audience and they simply
Mm-hmm.
mark you as spam. Other
Yeah. And
times it's the quality of the audience, like where it's coming from.
I'll give you a perfectly good real world example. Several years ago, I was working with a client and they had an excellent Yahoo reputation. They were getting clicks, they were getting high engagements, and then all of a sudden, one day, like literally, it tanked in half. Then the next week, it tanked again. And for the life of us, we're like, did something change in your email program, right? Did you change the creative? Did you change providers? What happened where there was an issue? Well, we dug into it, took several days. We actually found out that their IT department changed something up on their side, which eliminated DKIM, one of the authentication protocols. Didn't tell the email team that this happened so they can go through their motions to update everything. And guess what? Yahoo was like, we're not going to let this email in, even though you had perfect reputation before that. It was because of this change that sort of screwed everything up. Now, we were able to rectify it within a week or two, so we had to dig in deep. And this is the problem sometimes as email marketers, whether you're a copywriter or strategist like myself, right, is that sometimes you feel like you have to dig a 10-foot hole and look around at everything. It may not be something that you're doing. It may be something that somebody else did. And that's an important aspect because guess what? You can have the greatest Black Friday sale in the whole wide world. But if you're not going to get into the inbox, guess who's responsible for it? You are. You are responsible for it because you are in charge of your deliverability. And that is sometimes frustrating, but the goals keep moving around the field, right? For you to do this. And so sometimes even the best deliverability expert in the world will spend time kind of just identifying what potentially went wrong and then trying to fix it.
But that's normal since this is not like a one size fits all. Wow,
Totally.
this was very, very insightful, Andrew. And I'm hoping that this conversation helps to take the focus kind of away from the idea that
Mm-hmm.
deliverability is all about the open rate and the subject lines, and the focus being on copy and more on the elements, the strategic elements behind it, with
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of tech elements as well, like techie stuff as well.
Yeah. One final point that I want to make, and this is what you guys out there have to deal with. And if there's one thing that I think people need to take away from all of this is it does take time. If you get into a deliverability issue, if you're blacklisted, you can't just pick up the phone and be like, hey, Google Postmaster, get me out of your spam box or you out Yahoo. It takes time. And sometimes it takes a lot longer than you want it to take. So have patience. That's the one thing around deliverability is even the best deliverability expert in the world does not have a direct line to immediately snap the fingers, change things. So that's why it kind of is like taking care of your program before you have to be reactive. Because when you become reactive, that time is money. That time is frustrating. That time that you have to wait for something to happen is the worst feeling in the world. I've been there. I've done that with clients, and even the programs that I used to run, is that sometimes you just need to take a step back, take a breather, and know that it's not going to be solved in a split instant. Because we are all programmed as marketers to say, well, I send out an email and I get instantaneous opens and clicks and revenue and whatever. But when it comes to deliverability, that's not how things work. So take one thing away is be proactive, like we just talked about, rather than reactive.
Thank you, Andrew. I
Mhm.
assume that would be like the one thing you wished more people knew about deliverability, correct?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. On that note, if people want to learn more from you, where can they find you?
Look me up on LinkedIn. Link in with me. Send me a note. Happy to help. More than happy. I wanted to thank you for inviting me to this. I wanted to thank iPost, who sponsors me. If you're interested, just let us know. But look, if you can't find me on LinkedIn, there's another problem. But I'm active on LinkedIn, and that's really the best place to get a hold of me.
I agree. I learned a lot from Andrew's posts, so go follow him or connect with him. Thank you, Andrew, so much.
Thank you, Monica. I appreciate it.
You've listened to Master the Inbox, and in this season of the podcast, we're focusing on strategies to help course creators, coaches, and consultants run successful Black Friday campaigns. If you found this episode useful, then please help us spread the word. Like, share, and subscribe wherever you're listening.